Welcome to another episode of Full Frontal Fatherhood. My name is Julian Redwood, and today I'd like to talk to you about how to deal with a tantrum. For me, the moments when my daughter was tantruming were some of the hardest moments of parenting. Her on the floor, kicking and screaming, yelling at me. I felt powerless, angry, frustrated, and I would often make the moment worse. Fortunately, I learned a bunch of skills that make it really much easier as a parent and also much better for the child. The reality is that tantrums are a great experience. Tantrums are a chance for our kids to get their feelings out. Being a human is upsetting. Being a kid is even more upsetting. They're controlled constantly, limited, told they're wrong, scolded. It's just inherently upsetting to be in a small, limited body in that way. If we, in response to their tantrums, are telling them that they're bad and trying to get them to stop tantruming, it gets even worse for them. They get even more overwhelmed in that moment. They don't have the nervous system, brain, or coping mechanisms that we have to help themselves in that moment. So they get overwhelmed and they find themselves on the floor tantruming. But what do we do in response to that? If we don't like our own bad feelings, we're not going to like our kids' bad feelings. But the reality is that we all have bad feelings. We as adults try to soothe ourselves with coffee and alcohol and our phones and a variety of other things in difficult moments. Kids do it too. They'll reach for a book or your phone or a computer game or a lollipop or some way to make themselves feel better. But the reality is that both us and the kids in those moments need a chance to get our feelings out. We need a chance to be in whatever's uncomfortable, whatever sadness or insecurity, fear, whatever it is. If we can sit in it just for a couple minutes and let ourselves be all of who we are, life gets easier. We're not running around resisting, trying to not feel that bad feeling. If we teach this to our kids from a very young age, they have a much easier life. If we teach them that it's okay to feel bad and give them the tools to be able to move through those bad feelings, they don't have to have the same kind of struggles that we have where we're constantly trying to make ourselves feel better. Strangely enough, if we support our child to actually have a complete tantrum, they'll tantrum less. If we support them to get their feelings out, it makes sense that they'll have less to get out all the time. If we're constantly stopping them from having that tantrum or supporting them to stop themselves from having it, then they'll just go along and every hour or so, they will be triggered by something and that tantrum will come up. And then us and them will support them to push it back down, and it will happen really regularly. If we actually can get in there, support that complete expression of feelings, they come to a place of resolution and there's not something eating at them all the time. But we do often stop our children from tantruming. We either pull them out of the moment, tell them they need to stop, it's not okay for them to doing what they're doing, or we give them a lollipop to try to get them to be quiet, or we make them wrong in very little or big ways in those moments. So we need to shift our prerogative from getting them to stop having the tantrum to supporting them to have the tantrum and giving them a container within which they can express these feelings that are too overwhelming for them. Normally, if we're telling them they're bad or wrong, not only do they have the bad feelings of the tantrum, they also have the bad feelings of hearing our expression that they're doing something wrong and possibly their anger at us for that, which makes it even more overwhelming. If we can shift to being a receptive container for their intense feelings, it makes it simpler for them to work through them. And like I said, they will come to a place of resolution. So how do we move ourselves from being this bad object in that moment to a receiving good container? There's 5 steps that you can do that are all simple, difficult at times, but simple. The first is to stop making it worse by just keeping your mouth shut. Just by being there and being quiet and not being a negative force actually has an immensely different effect. It's hard to be with a kid in that moment. It's hard to take in their pain and their suffering. But if you can just, even in your difficulty, be quiet and be right there with them, that will make a huge difference. The second step, now that you've stopped yourself from making it worse, is to actually get down on your kid's level. Actually bring your eyes to their level or even below and see if you can take in their suffering. Just take a few deep breaths and feel how intense it is to be in that moment when they are feeling so bad. It's hard as a parent to be close to our kids when they're feeling that kind of anger and frustration and not have a defensive reaction that ends up leading to anger and frustration and a worse situation. If we can be in our own feelings, we can then start to become a container where we can receive their feelings. So breathe and receive what's happening for them, and just notice how intense it is for you. The third step is to validate their feelings. Rather than negating their feelings like we're inclined to do and tell them they're silly for being so upset about a popsicle, we go in there and we validate them. We say, yeah, you really wanted a popsicle and you can't have a popsicle now, and I get how mad that makes you. And then they'll go on with their anger. Oh, I'm so mad at you. Why can't I have a popsicle? There's nothing wrong with a popsicle. You're such a bad parent. It's my body. Leave me alone. Let me have a popsicle. And you go, yeah, I get that you're really mad at me. I'm right here with you, and I love you, and you really want that popsicle, and I understand. And that can go on for literally an hour. But if you stay in that experience for that length of time with your child and allow them to get all those feelings out that aren't about the popsicle, it's about so many things, about the kid that teased them, about the teacher that told them they should do it differently, about how you scolded them, about many things that aren't even verbal. There's just the reality of being in a young little body like that. And all these feelings can come out about a popsicle that have nothing to do with a popsicle. But validate whatever they're saying. Wherever they're going, just say, yeah, you're really mad, and I'm right here. The fourth step, and this may seem pretty crazy, is to trigger them more. Help them to have a bigger, longer tantrum. They're already in this juicy moment of emotional expression and openness, and we need to milk it for all it's worth so they can get all their feelings out. When they calm down, just remind them, yeah, you really wanted a popsicle, and I'm not letting you have a popsicle, and it makes you really upset. They may go back in and feel more of their anger or more of their upset, more of their sadness, and let them do that. Stay with them, breathe, and validate. The fifth and final step is to stay with it until it comes to completion. Completion is when the child has moved to a place of natural playfulness. You've reminded them of the original trigger, and they start to not care anymore. They start to giggle or laugh or look at you with a little smile. You can see that they've moved it through, and there's a lightness in them, an easefulness in them. But if you can take an hour with your kid occasionally and give them that kind of attention, they will tantrum less often. They will have less backed up feelings to get out that are constantly brimming. If you occasionally do this with them, it actually is much easier position for you as a parent and requires less energy in the long term. So in summary, move from being a parent that's telling the kid they're doing something wrong in those hard moments to being a parent that receives their intense bad feelings. Use these 5 steps. Particularly as a father, it's amazing for you to feel empowerment in these very hard moments, which are so often either left to the mom or we bring in force and strong consequences in an attempt to get the kid to stop, which usually don't work. If we find empowerment by not making it worse and keeping our mouth shut, getting down on our kids' level and breathing and finding empathy, validating their feelings, helping them get it out, triggering them again so we can really take advantage of the opportunity, and staying with them until they come to a place of ease where they're laughing and giggling and smiling. You'll see it in their whole being. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Full Frontal Fatherhood. This is hard stuff, and I would love to hear your ideas and comments about it, so please leave a note below. And if you like the video, please share it with your friends. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next Friday for another episode of Full Frontal Fatherhood.